headline says ASEAN Summit, Myanmar, South China Sea top on agenda. Ukraine forces down 17 drones in Odessa region. Moscow raids Ukraine grain port. Resnikov, Ukraine's defense minister, dismissed. And South Africa says no proof of arms delivery to Russia. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, numbering 10 countries and member to be East Timor, also known as Timor-Leste, is meeting in Jakarta this week in a summit fraught with difficulty. Leaders will meet from September 5th to 8th in Indonesia's capital with United States Vice President Kamala Harris, Chinese President Li Qiang, and other prominent politicians flying in. But whether ASEAN can reconcile the differences over Myanmar and stand up for East Timor and the Philippines is seen as major to its survival as the preeminent diplomatic grouping for Southeast Asia. Thailand's outgoing military-led government broke ranks with the bloc, which collectively had decided to suspend Myanmar's generals from top meetings and embrace the neighboring country's regime with support from China. Then last month, Myanmar's coup leaders expelled East Timor's top diplomat in Yangon after the Timorese joined a long list of countries in meeting with Myanmar's National Unity Government, NUG, set up by removed and elected lawmakers mostly associated with now-jailed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. On Monday, addressing ASEAN foreign ministers, Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi acknowledged the many difficult circumstances in the region, including Myanmar. The eyes of our peoples are on us to prove ASEAN still matters, Marsudi said. The bloc also faces continuing challenges over the disputed South China Sea, whether there has been scant progress on a much talk about code of conduct. Last month, the Philippines accused China for using water cannons to attack resupply vessels off Second Thomas Shoal. China's release of a new map depicting its expansive claims has also caused upset. In a region where the US and China are pushing for influence, ASEAN is battling to deliver on divisive issues which are undermining its claim to unite the region and act as a fortification against big power rivalry. Several hoped that with Indonesia chairing the organization in 2023, the differences could be tackled, but Jakarta also has struggled to maintain cohesion. Laos, a small landlocked country heavily dependent on China, is due to take the reins in 2024. The credibility of ASEAN's centrality, its leadership in regional cooperation, is under severe stress. A key problem is Myanmar's military regime, which has successfully split the organization, said Letitia van der Assum, a veteran diplomat and a former Dutch ambassador to Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. Talking Russia-Ukraine war, officials said on Monday Ukrainian troops downed 17 Russian drones over the southern Odessa region, adding that strikes caused damage in a district on the Danube River that borders NATO member Romania. Drones attacked civilian infrastructure. 17 UAVs were shot down by air defense, according to the Southern Command. 17 drones were shot down by our air defenses forces, the regional governor Oleg Kipa said, adding that there were no civilian casualties. But unfortunately, there are also hits, he said, in several settlements of Izmail district, where houses and production buildings, agricultural machineries and equipment of industrial enterprises were damaged. The Danube River port of Izmail has become a major export route for Ukrainian products via Romania, following Russia's withdrawal in July from a United Nations brokered Black Sea grain deal that had aimed to ensure safe grain shipments from Ukraine. Ukraine's military said Russia had used Iranian-made Shahed attack drones in the massive overnight attack, which was directed at the civil infrastructure of the area of Danube. The strikes come a day after Ukraine fought off a barrage of Russian drones in the Odessa region. On Sunday, Russia's army said it had aimed fuel storage facilities in the port town of Reni, which also lies on the Danube River that separates Ukraine from Romania. Monday's attack comes hours before a summit in Russia between President Vladimir Putin and Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who hopes to revive the Green Deal. Still on Russia-Ukraine war, Russia has launched a wave of drone raids on one of Ukraine's biggest grain exporting ports, hours before Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan were due to hold talks. Early on Monday, Ukraine's Air Force urged residents of Izmail Port, one of the country's two major grain exporting facilities on the Danube River in the Odessa region, to seek shelter. Odessa Governor Oli Kepa said at least 17 drones were downed over the southern region, but that attack caused widespread damage to port and infrastructure. Kepa added that preliminary information showed no casualties or injuries. The drone assault came as Putin and Erdogan were to meet in the Russian Black Sea port of Sochi to hold talks on a Ukrainian grain export deal that helped ease the food crisis in parts of Africa, the Middle East and Asia. The deal, brokered by the United Nations and Turkey in July 2022, had allowed nearly 33 million metric tons, 36 million tons of grain and other commodities to leave 3 Ukrainian ports despite the Russian invasion. But Moscow quit the agreement about 6 weeks ago, complaining that its food and fertilizer exports faced obstacles and that not enough Ukrainian grain was going to countries in need. Since then, it has launched frequent attacks on the ports of the Dnipro River, which has emerged as Ukraine's major route for exporting grain. Monday's attack, the scale of which was not immediately known, followed Russian attacks on Sunday on the other major Dnipro port of Reni, in which the port's infrastructure was damaged and at least 2 people were injured. A top aide to Erdogan said, according to reports on Sunday, that the meeting between the Russian and Turkish leaders will play the most important role in reviving the grain corridor. The current status of the grain deal will be discussed at the summit on Monday. We are cautioned, but we hope to achieve success because this is a situation that affects the entire world, said Alif Katagay Khalij, Erdogan's chief foreign policy and security advisor. Erdogan, who has maintained close relations with Putin during the 8-month war, including by refusing to join Western sanctions against Russia, has continually promised to revive the Black Sea deal. Still in Ukraine, Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that the country's defense minister Oleksiy Reznikov has been dismissed from his post. Reznikov had led the ministry since before the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. But in his nightly address, President Zelensky said it was time for new approaches in the defense ministry. Rustem Umerov, who runs Ukraine's state property fund, has been nominated by Zelensky as Reznikov's successor. Media reports have speculated that Reznikov will become Kyiv's new ambassador in London, where he has developed good ties with senior politicians. The 57-year-old has become a well-known figure since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. Internationally recognized, he has frequently attended meetings with Ukraine's Western allies and played a major role in lobbying for additional military equipment. But his dismissal has been anticipated for some time. Last week, Reznikov said he was exploring other positions with the Ukrainian president. According to reports, the former defense minister said if the president offered the opportunity for him to work on another project, he would probably agree. Ukrainian defense advisor Yuri Sak said, according to reports, that Reznikov spearheaded the transformation of the ministry, laying the groundwork for future NATO membership. But experts have observed that a cabinet reshuffle is unlikely to lead to any major change in Ukraine's battlefield strategy, with General Valery Zaluzhny, the commander of Ukraine's armed forces, overseeing the campaign. Reznikov's dismissal comes amidst a wider anti-corruption drive in Zelensky administration, with weeding out graft in the state seen as essential to Ukraine's desire to join Western institutions like the European Union. According to the Transparency International's Corporation Perceptions Index, Ukraine ranks 116th out of 180, but attempts in recent years have seen its position improve significantly. Away from Russia, Ukraine war, now to Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa, South African president, says an independent inquiry has found no evidence for claims that his country supplied weapons to Russia. The United States ambassador to South Africa, Ruben Brechte, had claimed the Russian ship Lady R was loaded with arms and ammunition at a naval base near Cape Town last December. The investigation discovered that the Russian cargo ship instead delivered armament that had been ordered from the South African National Defense Force in 2018. Ramaphosa said there was no proof that any arms had been shipped based on interviews with 50 people and a review of over 100 documents. The president said the allegation had had a most negative impact on our currency, our economy, and our standing in the world. In fact, it tarnished our image. Ramaphosa said he will only be releasing an executive summary of the report due to security considerations. The South African leader ordered an inquiry led by a retired judge after the U.S. ambassador told a media briefing in May that he was confident weapons and ammunition had been loaded onto a vessel bound for Russia. South Africa's foreign ministry later said that Brigidi had apologized for his comments, and the U.S. diplomat subsequently wrote on social media that he was grateful for the opportunity to correct any misimpressions left by my public remarks. South Africa, whose ruling African National Congress has historical relations to the Soviet Union, has maintained friendly ties with Russia since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, prompting criticism from the US and other Western countries. Under Ramaphosa, the country has hosted exercise with the Russian Navy and refused to join Western condemnation of Moscow or sanctions against the Russian economy. Ramaphosa last month hosted Russia and other major developing economies, including China and India, for the BRICS summit in Johannesburg. Now, African Climate Summit in Nairobi, in the first of a flurry of big meetings ahead of Crunch United Nations talks. Kenya hosts this week a flagship climate conference intended to showcase Africa as a potential powerhouse for green energy. With the world far adrift of its aim of slashing carbon emissions and communities battered by extreme weather events, the November Climate Summit in oil-rich United Arab Emirates will be dominated by clashing visions for energy. William Ruto, Kenyan president, says he wants the first African Climate Summit running in Nairobi from Monday to Wednesday to assist deliver African solutions. The goal is to transform the continent into the source of the world's revolution in green power, but to achieve this, it needs an influx of funding and help for its debt burden. Mavis Uwosu-Gamfi of the African Center for Economic Transformation, ESET, said Ruto and other African leaders have sought to show that Africa is not a victim but a critical player in solving the world's climate crisis. Africa, home to 1.2 billion people spread across 54 nations, is famously diverse politically and economically. Despite this, said Uwosu-Gamfi, its leaders have homed in on a set of climate priorities, from debt relief and low-carbon development to overhaul of the global financial architecture. The hope is to generate momentum for a series of major international meetings leading up to COP28. These include G20 negotiations in India, the United Nations General Assembly, and the World Bank and International Monetary Fund annual meeting in Marrakesh. When Africa speaks with one voice on an issue, she said it can be impossible for the rest of the world to ignore. And finally, on global news, Niger protesters demand extraction of French troops. On Sunday, numerous demonstrations in Niger held a third day of rallies calling for former colonial ruler France to withdraw its troops as sought by the junta, which seized power in July. Niger's military regime had fired a new verbal broadside at France on Friday, accusing Paris of blatant interference by backing the country's ousted president. Since then, tens of thousands of people have joined in the protest at a roundabout close to the Niger military base where French soldiers are stationed. Ties with France, the country's ex-colonial power and ally in its fight against jihadism, went swiftly downhill after Paris stood by ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. On August 3rd, the regime announced the scrapping of military agreements with France, which has around 1,500 soldiers stationed in the country. Niger's military rulers have also announced the expulsion of the French ambassador Sylvain Iter and said they are withdrawing his diplomatic immunity. They said his presence constituted a threat to public order. But last Monday, French President Emmanuel Macron hailed Iter's work in Niger and said he remained in the country despite being given a 48-hour deadline to leave. On Sunday, France once again justified keeping its ambassador in place. And that's all the news. Alheri Moses is sitting by with stories from Nigeria. But before then, a recap of major stories says ASEAN Summit, Myanmar, South China Sea top on agenda. Ukraine forces down 17 drones in Odessa region. Moscow raids Ukraine grain port. Resnikov, Ukraine's defense minister, dismissed. And South Africa says no proof of arms delivery to Russia. Please do join us again after this moment.
Thanks for staying tuned. It's Zuma Nigeria. In the news, NLC, TUC direct workers to join industrial action. Some state chapters of the Organized Labor Union have stated their preparedness to join the industrial action following the declaration of a 2-day warning strike by the Nigerian Labour Congress. The leadership of the state chapters of the labor unions, according to reports, say they have ordered their members to join the warning strike, which is scheduled to be held on Tuesday and Wednesday, September 5th and 6th, 2023. On Sunday, Mrs. Agnes Nsisi, the chairman NLC Lagos chapter, said Lagos NLC would join the nationwide strike. The Sokoto State NLC chairman Abdullahi Jungu also said the union in the state would mobilize their members in the state to join the two-day warning strike. The chairman said members of the council are due for a meeting on Sunday on the modalities. The Kano State chapter of the NLC has said it would join the planned warning strike and protest called by the national body of the union. Kabiru Inuwa, the state NLC chairman who made the declaration on Sunday, according to reports, said the decision to go on the warning strike was taken during the National Executive Council meeting in Abuja. Also, the Ekiti State chapter of the NLC said its members would join the two-day warning strike declared by the national leadership of the union. The state chairman, Kolapo Olatunde, said members in Ekiti State would join the two-day warning strike if the federal government did not do the required to stop it. Labour fault $180 billion palliatives, says governors will exasperate the program. Similarly, the General Secretary of the NLC in Gombe State, Ibrahim Fika, said they had received notice of the strike, adding that they would join. Fika revealed this on Saturday, according to reports. According to him, the union in the state will only mobilize by Monday after its state executive council meeting. Tinubu to attend G20 summit in India. Today, President Bola Tinubu would leave Abuja for the G20 Leaders Summit in New Delhi, India, on a special invitation from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The president will participate and deliver keynote addresses on both Nigeria and India Presidential Roundtable and the Nigerian-India Business Conference on the sidelines. The CEO Roundtable will be attended by the leading industrialists in the Indian private sector, Nigerian industrialists, as well as senior government officials from both countries. The president targets to use this platform to attract global capital and promote augmented foreign direct investment in major labor-intensive sectors of Nigeria's economy for job creation and revenue expansion. Furthermore, he would use this opportunity to stress Nigeria's attractiveness as well as an investment destination, precisely outlining his cross-sectoral reform plan to summarize by the Renew Hope agenda. The president's journey will also feature bilateral meetings with a cross-section of world leaders for 4 different continents, representing both G20 and non-G20 countries. These engagements are geared towards strengthening bilateral economic trade and investment partnership for mutual benefit. Tinubu is anticipated to share Nigeria's perspective on the theme One Earth, One Family, One Future at the G20 summit, which speaks to the global unity required to address challenges facing humanity and the planet. With its collective contribution of up to 80% of global GDP, 75% of international trade, and housing 60% of world's population, the G20 constitutes a major economic power block of social economic opportunity and geopolitical stability. Accompanying President Tinubu are members of his cabinet, including Yusuf Tagar, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Wale Edun, Minister of Finance, and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Dr. Bosun Tajini, Minister of Communications and Innovations, Digital Economy, Dr. Doris Azuka Ennis, Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Finally, FG to create Solid Minerals Corporation. The federal government has set out to create a solid minerals corporation to efficiently harness the nation's mineral resources. Yesterday, Mr. Dele Alake, Minister of Solid Minerals, revealed this at a briefing in Abuja. Also spoke of plans to review all mining licenses in the country and the need to establish mines police. He said the corporation would be similar to the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, NNPCL, adding that the government was prepared to take the bull by the horns to reap the $1 trillion worth of minerals under the ground across the country. Alake, who also noted that his ministry sought to add 50% to the country's gross domestic product (GDP) from solid minerals, said, and I quote, "The ministry will be introducing a security task force and mines police that would help the country combat illegal mining and smuggling. For the last time, let me declare that the ministry is giving such person 30 days grace to join a miners cooperative or find another vacation to do. On the expiration of the period, the full weight of the law will fall on anyone seen on a mining site without a determinable status. This message will be interpreted into Nigerian languages and broadcast on the radio to ensure no one is ignorant of this directive." He also noted that the government's strategy for the development of the sector had been compelled by the accommodation and mainstreaming of artisanal miners. However, he said in spite of these generous and patriotic signs, there still existed those who had defied all entreaties to join cooperatives and be formalized. And that's the news. Thanks for watching. I am Alheri Moses. Have a lovely week ahead.